Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Thanks for joining us. Well, we continue our discussion with individuals and organizations on, guess what, the Ukrainian situation. But first, scams and more scams. Be careful.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, joining me first, we have one of the leading experts on scams. He's Brian Roche. He's anchor and consumer investigator at WGAL News 8. Well, Brian, I'll tell you, scams, they are increasing. I'll put it that way.
Well, look, you've known me a long time.
Right.
My job is to follow scams and fraud. I'm a self-admitted geek, and every year, every March, I watch for what's called the Consumer Sentinel Report. It's a report issued by the Federal Trade Commission, and it gives us an idea of how scams are trending. The report just came out at the beginning of March, and it was a shocker. I've been doing this for over 20 years. Last year, 70% increase in fraud that's reported to the Federal Trade Commission, more than $5 billion in losses. And let me put that in perspective for you, Terry. That's a conservative number because only 25 of our 50 states actually participate in this report. And it's widely believed that only a fraction of people actually report fraud losses. So while we see $5 billion in losses at a 70% increase, it's believed that that number is much higher than that because a lot of people don't like to report that they've become a scam victim because they're embarrassed, especially older people. Older people don't want to tell their family, yeah, I lost a couple of $1,000s here because, you know, these people may be living on their own and they want to maintain their independence.
Yeah, sure.
So they don't want to tell their sons and their daughters, yeah, I lost a lot of money. So we think this number is extremely conservative. I've seen estimates as high as tens of billions of dollars of losses in fraud here in the United States alone.
Well, how are they doing it? That's the main question.
We have the tools at our fingertips. Think about it. Every single day, we have a cell phone. Most of us have a cell phone in our hand or a computer. And the scammer uses these weapons. These are weapons for them because they're right in your hand. They send you emails. They send you texts. They send you they make calls to you. They use that as a weapon against you because they know you've got that right in front of you. We're addicted to our phones. We're addicted to social media. Most people are. And that's how scammers go after us. They realize, I don't need to point a gun at you. You've already got the phone in your hand. You've already got the computer sitting right there in front of you. So if I go through the internet, if I go through social media, you're a target. You're just sitting there. I'm just waiting for you to push the button.
Well, the one question is, why are they doing this? I think I know the answer to it, but you give us the answer.
The money they make is phenomenal. And I have coworkers of mine who know that I do this every day, and they joke with me, Brian, did you ever think about doing this yourself? Well, yeah, of course. You think about doing this because here's the round numbers I use. If a scammer targets 100 people in a day and they have only a 5% success rate, still at the end of the day, they target 100 people with a $1,000 ripoff, they're still going home with a couple of $1,000s at the end of one day. You want to make $5,000, $10,000 a day? Who wouldn't sign up for that, Terry? That would be, you know, the dream of a lifetime. That's why scammers continue to do this, because it's profitable. And these scammers, the next question is probably, why don't we catch them?
Well, they're all over the world. Why don't we catch them?
Well, they're all over the world. I mean, most of them are in Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia. It's very difficult for the United States and the Department of Justice to extradite these people, let alone catch them. And they use technology, again, back to the computers and cell phones, that hides their location. So when they reach out to you through a computer, they send it through what's called the onion router, TOR, and they bounce it through multiple servers around the globe. So when law enforcement goes to look for them, they see this myriad of connections through the World Wide Web, and it's very, very difficult to find them.
We're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want you to talk about shipping scams, and the one I am waiting to hear about, romance scams. Imagine that. Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Well, we're talking about scams with Brian Roche. All right, let's go to something that you refer to as shipping scams.
Yeah, every year I do my top 10 list of scams. This was my number one scam for 2021.
Wow.
We've been stuck at home during the pandemic, and a lot of people started ordering more things online, shipping to their home. So scammers realize that there's an opportunity. So they've started sending out, and they continue to send out emails, but mostly text messages that say, Terry, here's your package. It's delayed, or you owe us money for this package, click on this link. And most of the time, again, it's either email or text message. Once you click on that link, you have no idea what's going to happen. They could steal all your personal information out that device.
Golly.
They could lock up your machine. They can get you to send them money for a package that you really didn't order. So these shipping scams have exploded since the beginning of the pandemic. Again, I go back to what I told you before. We're home. We're in front of our cell phones. We're next to our computers. That's how they get you.
This is really scary. Now, the one that I think a lot of us want to hear in here, where we're taping the program, is romance scams. What the heck is that about?
Well, they're very sad because when you hear these stories, they are heartbreaking. Basically, their scammers are stealing pictures of people and posting them on these websites, these heartbreak websites. People, widows, widowers looking for romance, looking for people to keep company with. And they pose as these individuals, and eventually we'll talk them into giving them money. They'll tell them, I love you, you're fantastic, you're beautiful,
my God.
the whole 9 yards. Sadly, I just did a story not long ago with a woman from York County, Pennsylvania. She lost $280,000 in a romance scam because this individual started contacting her, claiming that he was overseas and claiming that he was going to ask her to help him invest in some kind of scheme to make money for the two of them. As it turned out, the individual in the picture does exist. He's a widower from New Hampshire. We tracked him down, but he knew nothing about this whole thing. There's a current scam going on right now, a very popular one, where the scammer has stolen the picture of, I think it's a lieutenant colonel or some high-ranking U.S. military official based in the Midwest, and he's posing as this gentleman hitting on websites, going after widows and other women, trying to convince them that, I love you, let's get together, let's send money. But this is all done through text messages and emails. There's never any phone calls involved. Very, 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 very few of these cases have phone calls involved, and that is the number one warning sign of these scams. But these romance scams continue to proliferate. In fact, that report that I referenced earlier in the show, that was the number one, that was the scam that increased the most last year. Again, people home, stuck inside by their computer during the pandemic, and they're lonely, and they want to reach out and find companionship.
And there's so many different ways that you can get involved. I mean, yeah, you can download somebody on LinkedIn, let's say, or Facebook, and all of a sudden they'll get back to you and say, oh, by the way, do you know, here's an investment you can make, or how about free money from this government program?
Absolutely. And the one thing I wanted to mention there is they actually go, when they target these people through romance scams, they go through religious sites. They like to go through Christian sites, and that's how they get a lot of their victims there.
Yeah, I mean, this is, and there's little that the federal government can do to stop this because of the international nature of it.
They will go after, if they get multiple reports about one particular scam, they will go after it. One scam that does get the government's attention is anyone pretending to be a government employee, the imposter scam.
Right.
I think you were alluding to that a second ago. The imposter scam is when someone contacts you and pretends to be an agent of the IRS, an agent of the U.S. Treasury, an FBI agent, so on and so forth. And they're telling you you're being prosecuted and there's a charge against you. But if you act now and pay us hundreds of thousands of dollars, you can buy your way out of it.
And the way the government would do it would be to send you a letter and then to contact you about that letter, and you could follow through by calling the agency that they're identified with, correct?
You're right. I tell people all the time, you're not going to get a phone call. You're not going to get an email from an FBI agent. they're going to darken your doorway.
Yeah.
They're going to appear.
They're going to knock on your door.
Oh, Mr. Madonna, can we talk to you for just a second? They are not going to give you the courtesy of a phone call or an email.
Well, look, I want to thank you for coming in. This is unbelievable, and it doesn't show any signs of letting up, does it?
It does not. It's as long as there's money to be made there, and again, a lot more money was made last year, it's going to continue.
All right, let's talk helping Ukraine. We've been doing programs on it. We got another organization in the state of Pennsylvania that's helping Ukraine.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, Americans all over our country are helping Ukraine, and we've been doing a series on how Pennsylvanians, both individuals and organizations, are assisting Ukraine. Joining me to talk about that is Peter Greer. He's the president of Hope International. Peter, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
I'll tell you something. I didn't realize this until I did a little research, that you've been 25 years in Ukraine. So what are you doing over there that you probably can't do right now for obvious reasons? Or maybe you can, but go ahead. Why did you go there?
Yeah, so the organization that I work with is Hope International, and it was really founded in Zaporozhye, Ukraine, and it was founded after the fall of the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. And at that time, there was an incredible crisis. People didn't have food. People had a nation that was shattered, and a church in Lancaster, Pennsylvania said, we've got to do something. So initially they sent over food and supplies, mm-hmm. and were helping in the immediate crisis. But after doing that for several years, the Ukrainian people are incredibly entrepreneurial. They are incredibly hardworking. And after receiving this aid for several years, they said, you know what, your help isn't helping us anymore. Isn't there a way for you to help us help ourselves? And that really is how—
That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I mean,
it does.
Think about that. Ultimately, they do have to help themselves.
Absolutely. There's a time for relief, and then there's a time for development.
Yeah,
and they
well, let's
were
talk
recognizing—
about relief. What kind of relief are you providing?
Yeah, so in some ways it feels like we're going right back to that original situation in the 90s, and in this moment there is a crisis. So we have 47 staff that are on the ground in Ukraine.
Wow.
And I am so proud, Terry, of the way that they are responding. They are seeing need, and in many ways it feels similar to back in the 90s, and they are responding with a similar level of courage and compassion.
And they're putting their life in. I mean, given that bombing that the head of the Russian government, I don't even like to say his name to give him any credit, to give him any name recognition at all, but given the indiscriminate bombing, I mean, they're putting their lives in danger every day.
Terry, I literally was just on the phone with the team in Ukraine before coming here on my drive over, and that is exactly what they said. We have some of our staff that have been able to relocate to mm-hmm. Western Ukraine, to place of relative safety, but there are other of our colleagues that have chosen to stay in areas that are under attack, and they are helping provide food, they are helping to respond, they are truly on the front lines of responding. And I believe this crisis, like many crises, we are seeing the absolute worst in what is happening in an invasion,
right.
And we are seeing the absolute best.
Best in the way people
Absolutely.
Are responding, both Ukrainians, and they're getting assistance from all over the world, which I think is generally widely accepted by the American people in the polls. I mean, the American people don't want, us to put boots on the ground, so to speak, but they do want us to provide all kinds of assistance. Now, when you went over there originally, you were helping people gain experience, gain knowledge in terms of how they could provide for themselves in the work. What did that entail?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So it was after that period of relief, it really was the Ukrainian leaders that said, it's time for us to develop our own nation. We appreciate the help, but we have what it takes to rebuild. So Hope International's model is investing in entrepreneurs to help build entrepreneurs, help build businesses that rebuild their communities and then rebuild their nation. And so that's where there's so much connection to what's happening right now. We are back in a period of relief, but very soon, the minute that there is peace, we are going to have the enormous privilege of standing with Ukrainian entrepreneurs and helping them rebuild their nation.
Yeah, and I mean, that was your model when you first went over there 25 years ago, correct?
That's correct. Yep, exactly. So it was initially a group of 12 individuals that were invested in, and they were able to start or expand small businesses so they could provide for themselves. Done initially through a church partnership in Zaporozhye, but now it has grown to an organization.
Expands all over the
place. So we're in 17 countries around the world. We've invested in over 2 million entrepreneurs through Hope International's 25 history, and we are going to be there with our Ukrainian brothers and sisters, standing with them as they rebuild their nation.
We're going to run to a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about specifically what I want you to talk about, what you're doing specifically for a crisis response. Back after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
Well, we're talking obviously about Ukraine and Hope International's efforts to help rebuild Ukraine. They've been there, as we've been pointing out, for 25 years, helping get the economy moving again. All right, there's no doubt you're in a totally different mold now. You're in crisis response. That can't just typically be about helping people find employment. I mean, obviously that's going on, but it's literally safety, security, safety, the indiscriminate bombing, killing men, women, children, hospitals, children's institutions. I mean, it's horrendous.
It is horrendous. And when we are watching the news, we are not just hearing about cities that are far away. We are hearing about cities that we have been serving in. We are hearing about places where our colleagues live. And it is absolutely heartbreaking to watch what is happening. And at the same time, I just am so proud of our Ukrainian friends that are responding. And for us, we have this network of church partners, and they are opening up their churches, taking sanctuaries, turning them into dorms. They are taking food that they have extra and giving it out. They are doing everything possible to support.
And we have a website, your website that in which folks can reach you to find out in more detail what you're doing. Now, obviously, you're going to stay there and continue to do the crisis response as long as necessary.
That's right, yeah. But really for Hope International, this has always been our model. We are not going to sit back when there is a crisis. So we are going to respond to the immediate crisis with whatever we have at our availability. But the core mission for Hope International is really the rebuilding, investing in entrepreneurs. And we know it's not going to be some large international aid organization that really is going to be involved in the overwhelming rebuilding efforts. It's going to be the Ukrainian people. And so we're going to be able to stand with them, to invest in them as they rebuild their enterprises and communities.
And given the fact that so many have fled, but what's really surprising is the fact that so many have remained to fight this Russian invasion with almost any tools that they have available. And that looks like that's remaining consistent and is likely to remain that way for some time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Hope International invests in entrepreneurs, and right now, watching the way that they are responding, I was just on a call on the way here and listening to the way that shopkeepers right now that we've been working with, What are they doing? They are not increasing their prices. They are keeping them low so that individuals have food. We have one entrepreneur that was involved in construction, and he is now using his construction equipment to help build barricades to protect the city.
Yeah.
So this is a time of response. This is a time of everyone saying, what do I have in my hands? What do I have? And then how can I use this to protect and then eventually to rebuild the nation of Ukraine?
You started down an area, a subject area that I wanted to talk to you about, and as what does it take to I mean, I don't even know if there's an answer to this. How do you rebuild Ukraine once this is all over? I mean, it's going to take, it seems to me, an international effort, just as countries in Western Europe, in fact, all over the world, are supplying, aid in the conflict, but they're also supplying food and medical assistance, and that's going to have to continue for some time, correct?
That's right. And I am so proud of what we're seeing in the surrounding nations as well. We have friends, we have partners in both Moldova and in Romania, watching the way that they are helping in that evacuation process of those that are able to get out. For Ukraine, it still is the males ages 18 to 60 are not able to leave the country.
Right.
So for some families, the impossible decision of, do we send children? Do we send those out of the country?
More than 3 million now have left as this show airs.
That's correct, yeah. And at the same time, though, you're exactly right. The majority of Ukrainians are in Ukraine. They are in these places, and they are figuring out how to respond. But I guess in the international community, I am so grateful for the outpouring of generosity and support. It is humbling for Hope International to have friends reaching out and saying, how can we help Hope International? But the story that I think needs to be told is a story that we saw in the 90s. The international community has an important role to play, but the real central actors in Ukraine are the Ukrainian people.
So what you're saying, as the rebuilding effort takes place, the aid is there, but it's Ukrainians themselves. And I mean, they're going to need all kind of assistance, make no mistake about it. But it's going to take leadership. I think that's the big point. And there's where the entrepreneurship comes in that you're talking about. At the same time, the Ukrainian people have to respond, and if they can respond to the Russian dictator, I'll call him that, that seems to me to be the primary goal.
You're exactly right, yeah. And so for us as an organization, so our approach is, let's do everything possible. We have hundreds of entrepreneurs that we work with in Ukraine saying, we are with you through this crisis. How can we help? How can we be praying for you? How can we support you? And the day there is peace, Hope International will be there, recapitalizing entrepreneurs, investing in them as they rebuild their nation. And I can't wait for that day of peace to come.
Yeah. And I would imagine you have a lot of your folks from different parts of Europe that actually would want to go into Ukraine despite the fact that it's war-torn.
Absolutely. Again, our staff around the world, I am so proud. In many ways, it is a backdrop of incredible challenge that really highlights the resiliency, for us, the faith, the love, the action that it brings out as well. So grateful to be part of this global community that says, we see what's happening and we want to do something.
I want to thank you for your effort. It's extremely important. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.